Go for it.
Hey everybody, how you doing? This is for English composition. I was trying to figure out what the hell I would talk about, and I figured everybody's locked down, so I would give you a little primer on using caulk and sandpaper, spackle, and those things. So if you're stuck inside in your home projects, you know what to do. Now, when it comes to painting, there's a couple of secrets. There's a couple of things to making a nice job. If you ever hire a painter and he shows up and he doesn't have sandpaper or caulking, you should fire him immediately. Nowadays, because everything is locked down, if you decide you do want to paint, most hardware stores will deliver paint and supplies to you. You'll call them up, you'll give them your credit card, and they'll drop it off so you can get things done. But there's a lot of questions about how things should be done, so I figured I'd let you know. So, first thing I want to talk about is sandpaper. Now, I'm going to repaint this because what happens over time is no matter where you are or what's happening, eventually wood in the trim will crack, will dry, and the joints will open up where there used to be caulk, or if there wasn't any caulk in the first place. So the first thing you want to do is you want to clean the whole thing. Make sure there's any dirt is off of it. You can use soap and water, or you can go to the hardware store, or you can have it delivered from the hardware store, what's called TSP, which is trisodium phosphate. You soak it, you mix it up in some water, you wash everything down, it's perfectly clean. So then when that's done, then you sand everything. Now I generally use 120 or 180. Some people use 220, but you don't want to go any finer because you want to have that mechanical grip for the next coat of paint that goes on. And speaking of a coat of paint, don't believe in those one coat paints. It's impossible to get a good paint job unless you do 2 coats. That's a fallacy that paint companies will sell you, but it doesn't really work. Okay, so number 2 is spackle. Now there's spackle and there's what's called drywall mud. Drywall mud is used for fixing holes in drywall, especially a hole that's bigger than, let's say, 1/4 of an inch where you have to use some paper or a patch over top. Anything smaller than 1/4 of an inch, you want to use spackle. Now there's two kinds. There's 2 kinds of spackle. There's lightweight and there's regular. The regular is much heavier, but I like it better because the lightweight tends to clog up your sandpaper as you're sanding things. Okay? So, different kinds of knives. There's a metal knife and a plastic knife. I actually prefer the plastic knife for 2 reasons. Number 1, you can cut it down to smaller sizes if you need to. Also, for some reason, I tend to get a nicer finish with the plastic than I do with the metal. Okay? Tape. Don't forget to use tape on your edges, but only get painter's tape. Don't get anything else. Anything else should be called screw it up tape, because if you use duct tape or masking tape, all they're going to do is pull off the paint that you put on, or it gets stuck to whatever you put on, whatever surface you put it on. And then lastly, most importantly, let's talk about caulk. Now for inside stuff that's going to get painted, you want to use acrylic latex paint caulk, okay? Because anything that's silicone, which is another kind, won't take paint, okay? So you're going to use this. Now, and when you use the acrylic, you have to paint it because it's just going to attract dirt, okay? So here we've got a joint, you can see that opened up over time, the caulk dried. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to caulk this, then I'm going to use a little wet paper towel to finish that off, and you're going to see why it makes such a huge difference in terms of a paint job. So get it started. Doesn't have to fit perfectly in there. Okay. Release the pressure on it, otherwise the caulk will keep coming out. You can take your finger, wet your finger a little bit, run it right down. Now you see how much nicer that looks? Now it took you what? 1 second. And then you could go back. Now, the big secret with caulking is after you caulk, leave it alone for at least half an hour. There's fast set, which will set in 30 minutes. There's regular stuff that'll take about an hour. Leave it alone. A lot of people tend to come back and go, oh, and they mess the whole thing up. You got to do it all over again. Okay? So, My email is fatdad5312@gmail.com. If anybody has any questions about this or anything else to do with construction, I have a custom cabinet business. I'm not selling anything, but I want you to do is email me with questions so I can help you out, especially if you're stuck inside during, hopefully, the coronavirus passes quickly and everybody is safely. All right, thank you very much.